everyone. As you can see, we're returning the M2 iPad Pro. Let's talk about it. So as you saw in the beginning of this video, I am returning my M2 iPad Pro, and there are a few reasons as to why that's happening, and the first one is the obvious one, which is that I am an M1 iPad Pro owner to begin with. And even though I did make a video that the M2 iPad Pro is Apple's best iPad yet, and I'm not lying about that because it is their latest and greatest and it does have some incremental upgrades over the M1 iPad Pro, but from an M1 to an M2 upgrade, it's just not worth it. It really is not worth it for anybody, I don't really think. The hover feature is kind of cool to a certain extent. I've used it, especially in things like Affinity Photo, to show me a preview of what I'm about to erase or what I'm about to draw. But outside of that, the hover feature hasn't really jumped out at me as a staple feature. It's going to be kind of like Scribble, which is something that I don't really use too much. So it's there if you really do like it. And I do see Apple enabling this on lower iPads and older iPads as time goes on, because I don't think there's any specific hardware on the M2 iPad Pro that allows for this feature to occur. So anything that the M2 iPad Pro can do, the M1 should be able to do it as well, especially because the Apple Pencil is now running on almost 5 years of the same exact design and hardware spec. And that same argument of this incremental upgrade not being enough goes all the way back to the 2018 iPad Pro, and it really opened my eyes over this past week because I was at my parents' house and he has the 2018 iPad Pro, and the 2018 iPad Pro is still an amazing device. It still has the Pro Motion, it still has a 120Hz display, it still has the pretty much the same exact design language minus the camera bump. The camera bump is a little bit smaller on the 2018 iPad Pro, but from a form and function and almost a usability standpoint, that A12X chip is still plenty powerful. So unless you really want the mini LED display or you really want extended monitor support, as a tablet itself, the 2018 iPad Pro to the 2022 M2 iPad Pro, the difference is really not that big of a difference. So I will steer most people to an older version of the iPad Pro because Apple's been in this peak tablet situation and a front runner in market share when it comes to tablet use and tablet sales, that maybe they're resting on their laurels, or maybe they also think they've reached peak iPad and they're waiting for something crazy to happen for technology to catch up for a 2023 or a 2024 iPad Pro to really change up the design and really change up the hardware. And then reason number two I'm returning the iPad is because the future iPads that we'll release, especially in the iPad Pro lineup, it's time for a refresh cycle. And the first thing that Apple is supposedly going to do, according to Min Chi Kuo, is they're finally adding OLED to the iPad Pro lineup. And for all you screen buffs out there, OLED is going to be a great upgrade compared to Mini LED. So Mini LED is still an LED display and not an OLED. So with an OLED, you get the blackest blacks and the richest contrast colors. So bringing an OLED display to the iPad Pro is going to be a massive upgrade for a lot of people. And it should also trickle down to the 11-inch iPad Pro. Now there are tablets on the market, especially on the Samsung side, that have OLED displays, and you can really tell just how bright and powerful and rich those colors are coming from a Samsung tablet and then coming over to a mini LED display. And then also the mini LED display is only on the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, not the 11-inch. And the main reason Apple's waited so long to introduce OLED into iPads is because finally OLED technology is getting cheap enough where it makes sense to add it into the iPad lineup. As of right now, the iPhones do have OLED displays, but that's only in a small form factor. So bringing OLED to not only iPad Pros, but then also MacBook Pros is going to be the next wave, which should be happening in a transition between 2023 and 2026, with the iPad Pros being the first Apple product, aside from iPhones, to get an OLED display. And then in terms of which iPads we should be getting this, again, Min Chi Kuo was stating that the iPad Pro should be getting these first because that's what Apple does. They usually put the latest and greatest and kind of bleeding edge tech in their main high-end products, and then it trickles down to their lower spec ones as it gets more popular, as it gets more cost-effective, and as it makes more sense to include them in a cheaper form factor. So that's why you finally see that the iPad 10th generation is adopting that industrial design, because it's now cheap enough and they probably have enough parts and enough chassis from old iPad Airs and 11-inch iPad Pros that it makes sense to make it in a cheaper form factor. So that is what's going to happen. OLED will come to the iPad Pro first, and then trickle down to the iPad Air, then the iPad Mini hopefully, and then finally the iPad 10th generation will get that OLED display over time. And like I mentioned, the MacBook Pros, as they do iterate, because MacBook Pros currently have that mini LED display, which is beautiful in its own right, but OLED will be coming to those higher end MacBook Pros, and then hopefully eventually to maybe a MacBook Air or something. But that's yet to be seen, but do expect that to start happening, like I mentioned, between 2023 and 2026. So I just wanted to make this quick video to let you guys know that I am returning the M2 iPad Pro, but I still think the M2 iPad Pro, if you are a first-time buyer of an iPad Pro, or maybe you're coming from a much older 2015, 2017 iPad Pro, and this is what Apple is selling as their latest and greatest iPad, you're going to be extremely happy with it. I'm just saying for most people, the iPads are no longer a device where you upgrade year over year. I mean, iPhones aren't really that either, but there's so many cell phone plans and rebates and deductibles and ways that you can kind of play the system to upgrade your iPhone every year if that's what you want to do. But with iPads, it's a little bit different. They're more like computers. They're supposed to last a little longer. They're on 18-month cycles and 2-year cycles instead of the 12-month cycles that iPhones are on. So from the M1 to the M2 iPad Pro, there just really is no reason to upgrade. The only thing that I kind of enjoyed was that I got a much higher storage spec with the M2 iPad Pro versus a baseline M1 iPad Pro, so I stopped having storage anxiety. But that's not something specific to the M2 iPad Pro. That's something that could have been upgraded on the M1 iPad Pro. I just didn't want to spend the money at the time. So let's see what Apple does with a new iteration of an iPad Pro coming down the line, which again, we're still probably 18 months to 15 months out from a new iPad Pro hitting the shelves at any time soon, because these did just come out. But let me know in the comments down below what your dream scenario is for an iPad Pro. What type of hardware would you want? What type of software would you want? What would you want to add? What would you want to remove? Build your perfect iPad in the comments down below, because I'm very curious to know what would make the iPad your one and only computer. Is it as simple as just throwing macOS on there? Would you change the hardware? Would you add maybe more to the iPad OS software experience? Very curious to know, so let's have a discussion about that in the comments down below. But if you guys did make it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know that you made it to the end. And again, if you're on the market for an iPad Pro, buy the M2 iPad Pro and you'll be extremely happy with it. But if you're an M1 or a 2020 or even a 2018 iPad Pro user, this might not be the way to go unless you really want extended monitor support and you want to get that mini LED display right now. But that's going to do it, everybody. If you guys want to watch more Mac, iPhone, or iPad videos, click on one of these right here. But until next time, I'm Fernando. Happy holidays and enjoy the weekend. Peace, everybody.